So tell me, bro, why is time management important?
Alhamdulillah. Why is time management important? SubhanAllah. Time is life, right? Time is life, right? And we're asked as Muslims, to sacrifice our time, our life for Allah. Um, يا أيها الذين آمنوا هل أدلكم عن تجارة تنجيكم من عذاب عليم تؤمنون بالله ورسوله وتجاهدون في سبيل الله بأموالكم وأنفسكم ذلك خير لكم إن كنتم لا تعلمون. That Allah says in the Quran that shall I not tell you of a trade? It's interesting that Allah in the Quran gives these business metaphors, subhanallah, of a trade that will save you from a painful punishment, that you to jahidu, that you strive, right, in the way of Allah with yourself and your wealth, right? And so, we're commanded in the Quran to sacrifice our life. And when we think of this, and we think of the Quran and we think of the Hadith, and we all know that it's about, I think people think about life and they think life is this big, big, big thing, right? And the beauty of time management, right, is just looking at that in a different lens, right? It's because time is life, right? But I think the beauty of time management is like it kind of, when you start thinking about in time management and productivity and habits, it helps break down this, and this one's the secret of time management, breaking down something which is complex. It makes you think of biology actually, and digestion. But anyway, but breaking down something which is large and complex and a bit overwhelming, and making it something which is practical and doable, and you can do it step by step. I think that's a beauty of time management. So it's actually, time management is absolutely essential to every single human being, right? So non-Muslims are obsessed with it. People who are successful non-Muslims are absolutely obsessed with it. And the funny thing is, they say that, I think Brian Tracy, he quotes a study where they said that, I think it was Hatfield, they did this study where they looked at people in the 70s and they tracked them, one of those amazing longitudinal studies. They tracked them for like 20, 30 years and to see which one were the most successful, which ones were not so successful. And they found that the ones who had succeeded in the long run, the ones who had the greatest marriages and business success and health success, were the ones who had the biggest long-time perspective. That's what they called it, right? Or long-term perspective. In other words, when they made their decisions, they always took into account what would be the long-term consequence of this decision, right? I could just eat junk food all day, right? Or I could start eating healthily, right? Eating that will have better impact on my long-term health. I could just lounge around and just do the same job which everyone else is doing, or I could look at where I'm skilled at and where I could make most impact, right? They always looked at the long term. And then I thought to myself, subhanAllah, and their long term is boxed, right? They're just thinking of this world. Muslims, our long term is way off the scale, right? So we have, and that's why I wanted to teach Islamic time management. Because I'm thinking like, we've got, so much to offer. This is a secret to success, is having long-term perspective, and our perspective is already so long-term. We just don't live it, right? And so that's why time management is so important, because it's how we manage our time, how we organize our day-to-day life or week-to-week life, how we go about our goals, and that's life itself. That's living. And Islamic time management is kind of, I take all the best kind of models and principles out there, and I don't water them down, right? So it's not like, I mean, there are other people who might teach time management and they'll just kind of give hadiths and Quranic ayahs. And the thing is, the way I look at time management is the way I look at a car or something else, right? If you want to buy a car, or you want to utilize a car or utilize a laptop, whatever, say, I want an Islamic laptop, right? It's got to have Quran and hadith on the side. And, I want an Islamic car, it's got to have azan. It's just, you get a good car, right? And we use it to go to the masjid, right? We use a laptop to execute our Islamic projects, right? So I think of time management that way, that there are amazing systems and techniques and tips and strategies out there, right? Which non-Muslims have developed, Muslims might develop. I use them, I don't water them down, I teach them, but the difference is I use them for an Islamic purpose, right? So the first thing I do with any client is like, I will unashamedly, I say, look, I don't care if you want me to kind of help you double your income or to help you get an advancement in your career, whatever it is. But first, I'm gonna evaluate, Deen first. We're going to look at how's your Islam doing, right? That's the way I work. It's Islamic time management. I'm not just a normal high performance coach. I'm a high performance coach who will always put Allah first time management. And I believe that helps me with my intention. And then also ultimately it will help, because at the end of the day, we don't have a big business, we don't make lots of money, we don't advance our careers, but we still manage to please Allah, or we still manage to do our obligations, all that will not matter, right? And if someone is, mashallah, and I get clients at different kind of levels. Some are already quite practicing and they're doing that, but they're not making impact in other areas of their life. Fine, we don't need to focus on ibadah. We need to look at because time. One of the things I think Muslims, I find you get two types of Muslims, and I've always intended to make a book about this called The Practicing Muslim. Maybe it'll come out, inshallah. Because as I grew up, I saw two types of Muslims. You'd see the kind of stereotypical practicing Muslim with the big beard, the thobe, the topi jubba, and they were very the dove in the masjid, practicing and doing lots of adhkar and all this, but they'd be like really bad in their dealings. Maybe the family's are not happy, the wife's not happy, the children are not well educated, they're struggling income wise, right? That was one kind of stereotype, right? And then the other stereotype is like the Muslim's really successful, really kind, really good to his neighbors, brilliant community activist, but he's not even praying, or he's doing some haram, right? And so for me, it's like the practicing Muslim combines the two, right? They're like a saint in the night and a warrior in the day, right? Like the Prophet and the Sahaba were, right? And so it's this excellence in all spheres. And the science of time management, the nice thing about it, it helps you look at these different spheres in your life, your family life, your work life, your health. Look at all these levels, all these different areas, and improve them and optimize them for the sake of Allah.
Okay, so I get why time management is so important, right? But let's imagine this. I am someone who's never done any form of time management. I kind of see myself as a creative, free spirit, those type of people, right? Why plan? Why do all that kind of stuff? And now listening to you, I feel like, yeah, you know what? Time management is my life. I should do something about it. Never done anything. Where do I start? How do I get this going?
Okay, that's a good question. So, I mean, obviously, part of what I do is to kind of offer training in these kind of things. So the simple answer is like, get on my mailing list and learn from me. But on a more simpler level is I mean, I've got some. I don't know if you're going to ask me this. I've prepared some like tips, for time management.
Yeah.
And so the first thing I say is like you have two types of time management. You have kind of big picture time management, which looks at the kind of big picture, your life and where you're going, and then you have small picture, which is kind of like getting efficient and effective and your day-to-day stuff, right? And so I always believe, like Stephen Covey said, first things first, that we should start with the big picture, start with our intention, start with like looking at where we're going in life. And this is actually quite hard because it takes reflection, it takes kind of thought, it takes like kind of, you have to kind of just unplug yourself from the world and the business and sit back and reflect. And this is where you look at something like, you do something like a mission statement. You kind of look at like where you're going in life. What's your purpose? Right? Sometimes people are so busy. We can go decades. People sadly could live their whole life and not have actually questioned, why am I here? What am I doing? And even as a Muslim, right, alhamdulillah, as Muslims, we do have a level of mission. We know we're Muslims, but are we doing that properly? Have we evaluated, am I living my mission as a Muslim to the best of my ability? And so I'd say the first thing is to kind of do that big picture, look at your mission. Secondly, part of that, which helps and aids this, is a sunnah practice of remembering death, right? So when you remember the destroyer of pleasure's death, when you reflect on that and you think, okay, if I was to pass away in a year's time or in a month's time or a week's time, which could happen, right? How would I want to live my life? How would I want to live my life? That helps put things into perspective and into focus. And then thirdly, which is all part of the big picture, you start looking at what are your roles in life? Like, what are you, right? Are you a father? Are you a mother? Are you a daughter? Are you a worker? Are you a student of knowledge? Are you a neighbor? Are you a relative, right? Think about all your roles in life. And kullukum ra'i, the Prophet ﷺ said, that all of you are shepherds, right? And you'll be asked about your flock, right? So, and I remember, I think I heard a talk from you in the past where you talked about, like, you mentioned this hadith, that we are all leaders, whether we like it or not. We're responsible for people, right, in our different roles. So you look at all your different roles and you ask yourself, you evaluate yourself. How are you doing, right, in those roles? Give yourself a score out of 10. How are you doing in those roles? And then you realize that, okay, you've got some imbalance here. And to fit that, you kind of make goals, in each of these roles. And so I actually did a training recently called how to, reset the Qibla of your life, masterclass, how to reset the Qibla. And I went through all three. So, if any of your listeners are interested, they can contact me. And that's a training which is just a one-off webinar training. It's like $30 or something. So that's I recommend that. That's a good, if you want a shortcut, you can either read 7 Habits and try to read and implement that. But one of the reasons I'm in business is a lot of people don't have time to read. Mm-hmm. And 2, a lot of people, when they do read, they don't have to implement. So if you want a shortcut, you can access that training, and that's part of the thing I treat. So that's the first 3 steps, the big picture. Once you've got the big picture in motion, the tips I'd give for small picture efficiency. So I'm on tip number 4 now. I'd say it would be weekly planning. Right, weekly planning, or even daily planning if weekly planning is too hard. So one of the habits I'm very happy that I've managed to achieve as a family is that me and my wife, we get together on a weekly basis. We go to we started at home, but then we realized it gets too heated and complicated. We go to a cafe now, make a bit of a meal out to make it an interesting thing, and we actually plan our week. And then this is a super skill if you can do it. It's an amazing practice. You can do it with your wife, because you can then get clear on your goals for the week and your activities for the week. And especially, I mean, even at one basic level, just to be able to kind of talk about all the landmines and potential problems and scheduling, just to kind of talk through all that. Childcare, it's amazingly helpful, right? When you're not doing that, you're just dealing with urgent matters and things show up. But actually, if you could pre-plan, like a military, see your life, see your week like a battle, right? The battle is useful, right? And what do people do before a battle? What do soldiers and generals do before a battle? They have to plan. They have a strategy. So planning is like your strategy for dealing with the battle of life, right? And especially nowadays, we have so many the distractions coming at us, right? So I'll say weekly, and if not weekly, at least daily planning. Fifthly, I've written Allah first, and maybe this should have been even before. But if there is an aspect of your deen which you are neglecting, like a wajib, I'll talk about something which is compulsory, like one of your prayers. If you're a brother not going to the masjid, for example, that's a very common one, by the way, that many brothers, they pray, but they know they should be going to the mosque more often. They know they should be doing fajr, right? So I find that like actually a big blind spot in many people. I'm like, oh, how are you doing? Yeah, Islam's great. Like, okay, how's the masjid going? Oh, yeah, well. Right, that's a big deal, right? We know that the Prophet would he was a very subhanAllah, his gentleness, his rahmah. But what did he say about the people who he felt like getting firewood and burning their houses? That's a huge thing, huge statement. Would we want to be part of that? Right? So that's a big one. Look at Allah first. Is there any area of your life which you're not following the Sharia? You're committing haram. Or you're not doing. That's your priority, and I don't care. If you're not advancing your career, you're not, because as Muslims and as an Islamic time management coach, that is my first priority, is to make sure that you're putting Allah first, because at the end of the day, when we pass away, that's going to be the priority. That's going to be the most important thing. So that's why I say Allah first. Check that there are no hidden areas in your life which you've not, or areas in your life which you're neglecting Allah's rights, right? Because ultimately that's the most important. Number 6, eat that frog, right? That's the name of a famous book, Tracy. And it's an analogy that in the past, people apparently in villages they'd sometimes they'd be forced to eat frogs, and they didn't like it, they're not that tasty, and so they're saying, if you've got 2 frogs, eat the biggest one first and eat the ugliest one first, right? But you get you get the hardest one out of the way, and then the other ones are easier, right? So it's a good analogy for when you've got lots of tasks, often we procrastinate on the hardest ones, and typically the hardest ones tend to be the most important tasks. And so eat that frog. It's a very simple concept, but it's hard to act on. Is prioritize the hardest tasks which require the most focus and energy first, so you've got the most energy and you actually get them done. Because the secret, and this is another secret, that don't sweat the small stuff. Truly successful people, like Richard Branson. Do you think like he's got like a perfectly clean desk all the time, or do you think he's perfectly punctual on all his bills? And I'm sure there are areas of his life which are maybe in disarray, or maybe doesn't get done, right? But the secret to successful people is that they're really good at doing the important stuff. They get that done day after day, week after week. The small stuff will get taken care of itself. When you get successful, you can outsource it, inshallah, right? So don't sweat the small stuff. Focus on the big stuff, and that is honestly that if it has to summarize the difference between successful people and people who are not successful, people who are very good with the time and those who are not, are people who rise, right? Are the ones who really they understand what are valuable items, what are worth spending time on, and they make sure they do that day in, day out, and week in, week out. And finally, looking at really small things, one of the biggest problems in our time is digital distractions. So a simple tip for that, and again, this is very hard to implement, I'm still working on this, is to batch things like emails and phone calls. Right, batching is a super time management skill. Many people are quite good at batching shopping. Mashallah, I've noticed aunties and uncles. Mashallah, they'll go in and they'll get, in fact, I want to interview one of my uncles. I want to ask him how he, because one thing I realized, it's not so simple, because it only saves you money if you then adjust your finances, right? But anyway, that's a different thing. But batching is known to be efficient to save money. It's also very efficient with phone calls and emails. But if you're able to, and social media, if you're able to batch these, and course creators, and one of the ironies is, one of the books I want to recommend in a minute, Digital Minimalism, Cal Newport interviews social media gurus, people who are social media experts and actually, as a living, are spending loads of time on LinkedIn, Facebook, on all the platforms, right? And funnily enough, they probably spend a lot less time than you and me on these platforms. They're actually very super laser focused on when and how they spend their time. And so, one of the ways to do it is to batch it, to have actual set periods of time, ideally maybe a few times a day, 3 times a day or something. And just in that time, all you do is, for example, email answering, or all you do is just social media posts and things like that. That, it sounds easy, but trust me, that if you can do that, you're in the top 1% of the world easily.